Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as ever, I'm going to date stamp this. So it's year 4 blog 51, which means that we're ending year 4 next week. Wow. And in legacy numbers, it's blog number 207, and it's dated the 8th of February 2026. And yeah, it's been, I don't know whether you call it the new norm anymore in regards to my life. It's been a mixed week. I've tried to remain positive. It's been difficult, as every week has been. It's had some fun moments. It's had some moments to make me dwell on things. I look outside, the weather is much like it was last week, damp, dank. I feel I should be doing something in the garden, and always I run out of time. It's made me think forward. Next week is a special important date for my mother because it's her birthday. And I've been talking for several weeks about how my sister and I can handle that, whether we can take her out for a meal. It falls on one of the special dates in February, Valentine's Day. If people don't know, my mother's name is Valerie. She was born on Valentine's Day. So that'll have an impact on the blog as well next week. And work is work. And this week cleared up a few medical things going on with me. Some good, some bad. At least one scare is clarified. I will say that. Won't talk too much about my own health. I always concentrate on my mother. It was nice about one thing, and I'll talk about that when we get to my week, I suppose. But first, we'll get the news out of the way. The news, as you know, doesn't include the war anymore. I still think about that. As far as I know, nothing's changed. Definitely from what I've read briefly this morning, when I looked and went, oh, I don't do the war anymore. I had a look and went, no change. So in many ways, I'm glad about that. And as you know, I don't really have too many opinions about the news. It's always doom and gloom. There's always a lot of bad stories, very few good stories. And this week, it's all been pretty much political. There's some good stuff in there, but let's get the political stuff, which has been all over the news this week. And I suppose it's reverberated around the world. The top story, Peter Mandelson, right? He's been on the news all this week because of his close ties with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. So it read like this: Peter Mandelson's scandal continues. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein has caused major concern as he loses his political whip. Yeah, you have what they call a whip when you're in Parliament. So those have been stripped away, and it's caused a police inquiry into his actions. They found out earlier this week with the release of all of those emails that went around the world, reverberating with many, many people that were involved in this. But apparently he was selling political and political and information to Epstein, which impacts on security. That's right, impacts on security. Apparently he got a big payoff of like £50,000 or something, and he gave certain information that would aid Epstein and his businesses and links. But put a question mark on our own British security. So, yeah, major thing there. But the big news came on Wednesday during what they call Prime Minister Questions, where all of the parties, the Conservatives, the Liberals, they all had their questions to the Prime Minister. The Conservatives were very hard and pushed in regards to Keir Starmer's knowledge of his connections with Jeffrey Epstein, for which the Prime Minister for the first time admitted he knew of the connections, but kept insisting that Mandelson lied to everybody, and his lies were so good that it sort of like bypassed some of the security aspects of things, and so they in trust agreed with the things that he was saying. What a nonsense. I mean, as a civil servant myself, I had to be vetted. I had to have all sorts of security checks to allow me to go into prisons, as rightly you should. So you think to yourself, a powerful person like this that has to be transparent would have been vetted closely. But all it took was a few words, and they went, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's what we're supposed to believe. And I'm going, what? Oh, I'll go for any job then. It looks very much like I'd get it. It bewilders me. So this has raised the alert for Keir Starmer in regards to his position as Prime Minister. And they're urging for him to resign, all the other parties. And of course, I dare say there's internal conversations going in within his own party. And rightly so. I'm not a fan of him. So I have to look at it and go, sometimes you go on the strength of what people say, but not in these positions, not in these positions of power. No. So that's my opinion on that, as much as there is one. So the rugby has started. We have something called the Six Nations. England have started off well. They beat Wales 48-7, which seems like an incredible score. But Wales are in this rebuild situation where a lot of their players are new. There's a new manager. They're building. I dare say it's like putting your own stamp on things when you come in, and when your players are getting older, you have to start thinking of newer players, and you're supposed to phase them in gradually, but this is sort of like a whole new rebuild for Wales. So that's how I believe it is. So that's the rugby. I'm not a big rugby person, although I played it at school, and I was a person that wasn't too bad. I was what was I mostly? Fly half and scrum half, mostly. When I was there, probably because of my bulky nature at the time. I wasn't incredibly fast at running, but you'd tend to find that rugby is one of those games of pushing forward slowly. It can be a fast game. You can be kicking it up the field, and then they pick it up and they kick it back and all of that. But eventually it lands, and they basically turn it into scrums. And, it's an interesting one to watch, but it's just not my game. Not my game. Cricket was mine. I loved playing cricket. I loved playing golf. I loved playing badminton. Badminton I really loved. And squash for a time. But my dad loved football, cricket, but he loved all sports. I swear, if he saw two flies going up the wall, he'd be looking and saying, "I wonder if the one on the right will beat the one on the left." He was a lot like that, and he loved his horses, and I dare say that's the ties to the farms, and so forth. So that's pretty nice memory to have. The 2026 Winter Olympics have started. There was an opening ceremony. I believe it was watched by millions across the world. I dare say that then turns into a billions global viewing, which must be good. I hope the Olympics have always been to me something where you unify and you forget about all the political stuff in it, and you watch fun, competition, if you see what I mean. England's never been good. Was never any good in the Winter Olympics. Our biggest ones were the ice skating and so forth. And just recently it's been curling. And to be quite honest, I've really gotten into the curling in the last couple of years. And I suppose it's because England have been doing well. And I do excuse myself if I get it wrong, English, British, whatever. It's a unified sort of like position. And, from my point of view, I live in the UK. So, of course I'm going to be pro that. But I like it. I like all the teams. But it's just that it's always the same with the Winter Olympics. It's always Canada and the Swiss and those sorts of countries that do incredibly well. We don't have snow. We have a temperate climate. It's wet, damp, dank. Everything that we do in regards to preparation is false snow, or because we can't afford to send them over where there's real snow to do anything. I always like the bobsleigh. Every time the Winter Olympics is on, I watch Cool Runnings. That's another thing. I watched the film Cool Runnings with John Candy and the Jamaican bobsleigh team, which is a true story. So that just shows you my knowledge of the Winter Olympics, which is next to nothing. They showed a few documentaries this week about, what's her name? Tonya Harding. Yeah, this was in the 90s, about mid-90s, about 94, I think, where she was involved with scuppering one of her teammates when they were both vying to get onto the team to get a gold medal. Tonya Harding's husband apparently got people to kneecap or attack. I forgot what her name was. It Catalina or something like that. And there was all a big hoo-ha about when it all came out, how much she knew was going on, and apparently it ended her career. And she admitted to knowing after the fact, not before. She didn't apparently, and she keeps hold of this story, that she knew nothing of the preparation and only knew about it after the fact, but she didn't alert anybody to it. That then gave her jail time, I think 100 days or something, and banned for life from anything to do with skating, which is a big thing when all of your life, including going to college, was based around that. And a gold medal would enable you to go to exhibits and make money and get sponsorship. So it basically destroyed her. Many people will have their opinion on that. It's so old now that I just remember it as a brief thing that came up on the news. Because in 93, 94, what was I doing? I was still at Lloyd's Bank. I was going to night school. I was going to America twice a year. Always fly-by holidays, fly drives. Yeah. So my mind really wasn't on Winter Olympics and things like that. I'm sure my dad was following it vividly, being sport. The rest, more flood warnings. Yeah, we're in a very damp and dank period at the moment, but they're now warning that the end of February, so we're in the middle, sort of like beginning middle now, is going to get much colder. Ice, snow is coming. We'll see. I bet you there'll be more storm names. That's a surety. And the last thing was the Bank of England have issued interest rate freeze at 3.75. Apparently, it was a very close vote by the Bank of England. It was a 5-4 vote. So it was frozen rather than cut. But they believe that there'll be more cuts for the end of the year. They believe in 2027 we will see things returning to around about 3%. This is all very political, all very cost of living, savings, house prices linked. So, yeah, all I know is bloody fuel prices and everything are just crippling everybody out there. Cost of living with food is another one. And, of course, all the scandals around Nectar prices and Tesco membership card prices all being scams to make you buy things that, to be quite honest, aren't beneficial if you go to other supermarkets like Aldi, which are looked at from a point of view of cheapness, and so the quality comes to mind. But Aldi has got fantastic reputation in regards to quality. There was a thing on YouTube that I listened about the top 10 supermarkets, and when they talked about say one particular thing like beef burgers, yeah, there you go, beef burgers, Tesco, Farm Foods, Sainsbury's, Lidl, all of those, waste of time. Stuff that is filled with breadcrumb and maize and stuff, and they fall to bits when you cook them or shrink down to something that less than a 10 pence piece. And when you look at the quality in the beef for Aldi, much higher, much more stability in its consistency for staying together, and the same prices as the budget ranges in Sainsbury's. So yeah, you do have to shop around. Certainly made me think in regards to the cost of shopping for my mother. I ought to do more of going to places like Aldi. It's all to do with that when I wasn't able to drive for 3 months last year through that mistake made by the GP surgery. Sainsbury's was used over and over again, and you just get into a routine. And the last bit is that there was a sports person that I sort of like really knew growing up. That was John Virgo. Now, John Virgo was a 4 times champion of snooker. And he died this week at the age of 79. A ruptured aorta apparently was the problem. In pain for 3 days and finally died. So very sad that. But I remember him beating Terry Griffith in 1980. There was a lot going on in snooker in the 80s, you know, when you think about Steve Davis and Hendry and all of those, you know. So John Virgo was sort of like retiring, not the big player that he was when Steve Davis was winning so much. He eventually sort of like definitely retired in the 90s and went on to become sort of like a presenter, broadcaster type person. So he was in a BBC game show called Big Break, which I didn't watch too much because I wasn't a Jim Davison fan. But I do remember quite a lot of him in that show. And I know he went on to do exhibits, and he was well known for doing trick shots, much like Ray Reardon did. Ray Reardon was a big character in snooker, but when he retired, he basically just did exhibits, or they'd talk about his history of his his years in snooker. And these are years where there wasn't a lot of money. And snooker was considered something that you did. You went down to a snooker hall or a pool hall. It was during the years of Hendry and, Steve Davis, that money started to grow in that era to the point where it's at now, which is as big as darts. I would say darts has come a long way. They just had a competition where the grand prize was 1 million for the winner. I mean, usually the purse is 250,000. That must make you wake up and go, whoa, go there and get 4 times my pay packet if I win. Right, going for that one. So money, greed, all of that sort of stuff all comes in. And that's the news. So we get to me. Like I said, it's been a very mixed week. When it comes to my work, I've been on what they call data quality. So if something is not changing in our dashboards in regards to anomalies in the data, all I've got to do is training. That's it. I'm not given too much new stuff. So I've been doing more training. I finally finished one whole training course, which is the hardware asset ServiceNow training, and I'm now on the ServiceNow administration fundamentals, which again is the same length of time. It's if you were to do it as a class, it's a 14-hour course. They usually call those 3-day courses, but I've got to do it in the time where there's no work being presented to me. And I'm at the end of this week, I got to 15%. So I've got till the end of this month, no later than the end of next month to finish it. So you'd think, if you can get 2 hours training in per week, and you've got 6-7 weeks, 2 times 7, 14. So yeah, you could do that. I swear that the reason that they're not giving me stuff is so that I concentrate on the training without actually thinking, is my mindset in the right place? Is my health in the right place? Part of my problems is blurry vision and all sorts of stuff. Concentration is difficult, but it is work, and I recognize we need to be at a place where everybody's done these courses, so that if there ever is an advertisement for a new analyst to come into the team, then they would have to have the minimum of this skill set. So I get it. It's one of those things. But yeah, it's been a difficult week because a lot of time has been left for me to do training, and I've sat down and I've read stuff and I've gone over stuff again, and I've had to open up the lab work, which opens up a virtual area for me to do some of the examples. And with everything that's been going on with my mum, it's become very difficult. So, which leads, I suppose, into my mum. And what you have to understand is that everything that I talk about with my mum is a degenerative problem. And so, as you know, at the end of last week, we had a bit of a scare, and the antibiotics ran out about Tuesday. And so we then were on sort of like high alert in regards to breathing. And we noticed from sort of like Wednesday onwards that my mum's breathing is definitely laboured. I notice it more because, unlike my sister, and this isn't a divide of any sort, in the evening I have a little bit more free reign, so I use my mother to walk from the living room to the bedroom because it exercises her legs. We would never do that in the morning. And the reason we wouldn't do it in the morning is because she's been laying down for hours and her joints are stiff. And this is the reason why I like doing the evening, because I can do that. I don't have to use wheelchairs and things unless my mother is, I see that she's really, really tired. Now, I worry now because she's getting tired. She still has that I want to stay up attitude when she wants to go to bed. But you start clearing things away and she accepts the fact she's got to go to bed. So I then judge whether I think the Zimmer frame is a proper way for her to exercise and walk. And so far, she's been okay, but I'm starting to second guess myself because of the chest infection. Now, the antibiotics have run out. When she sat down, I usually give her a glass of orange, tumbler full, and her tablets. And what the vascular dementia will do will slowly shut your brain off to what your bodily functions used to do naturally. So some of those is swallowing. Okay. And I noticed that when she's doing her tablets and she's putting them in and drinking, because it's in her hand, she continues to drink and she gets out of breath. And then she won't raise her glass high enough for it to go down. So you hear a gurgle like this, and it scares the life out of you. But it's something that you sort of like help with, because you go, Mum, tilt your glass higher. And to the point where I managed to get it into a much better situation, but it's scary. And I talk to my sister regularly about laboured breath and wheezing and all of this sort of stuff. So we had the nurse come out. This is the bad side. So on the Thursday, we had the nurse come out because we weren't happy after the antibiotics had been finished. And a couple of days down the line, we still feel that the infection is still there. So she came out, did an ear test, the temperature and the blood pressure and all of that sort of stuff. And she said that the left side seems clear, but the right side, there's a small crackle. Now, this is set different to last time where the left was silent and the right was clear. So two totally different things. It confuses us. We don't know what to take of that. Blood pressure fine. She asked us about the drinking and the eating. That's always a difficult question because it's different on each and every day. But on whole, we try to make my mother drink at least 1.5 litres of fluids, which is harder during the day, but easier in the evening. And the reason for that is, as I always give my mum a cup of tea before she goes to bed, and she always has a glass of orange to drink her tablets down. So she's getting at least half of that 1.5 litres in that last hour. Not good, though, for bladder, when waking up in the morning and she needs to go to the toilet, and what's been piling up in her pads. So, it's difficult. But I think my sister has done a wonderful thing, with the food. She definitely eats more for her main meal. I give her a small meal, which is usually a jacket spud with cheese and Branston pickle on the side or something, or beans on toast or something. And if it's very, very light because she doesn't want to eat at all, it would be Jacob crackers with cheese on. My sister makes her eat much better, like fruit and veg and all of that sort of stuff. And of course, she has a vitamin B and iron tablets in the morning, all of that sort of stuff. So she's well cared for. So that question was asked. And she said she thought another course of antibiotics could be on the offing, but it would all be down to what the GP says. And so she went away. My sister and I then agreed that the temperature that we've got, the thermometer, is just one of those little ones you put in your mouth. Wasn't very good. I had to go and get my tablets and see the doctor on Friday. So I looked at how much an electronic thermometer would be, the one you stick in your ear. And no word of a lie, twice as expensive as Amazon. So this is what you do. You look at the cheapest at Amazon, which is about 11 quid. And you look at the prices and they go up to 60, 70, 80, 90 pounds, depending on functions, right? And you look at the one there and it's 26 pounds. So it's twice as expensive in the pharmaceutical surgery. So then I looked at the range in Amazon for the 26 quid range. And Braun apparently do some of the best ear thermometers. And they do one, there was one that was on sale, right? From 60 quid to 32 pounds. Now this is £6 more than the budget that I was thinking of. I wanted 26 quid, right? But it connects to your phone, does all of this sort of good stuff about measuring your temperatures and keeping a track and all this sort of stuff. And of course, it does things like give you a gauge by color. When you put it in your ear and you press it, it tells you the temperature based on your age that you set. It tells you green is good, yellow is warning, red, call a bloody doctor immediately. So it sort of like checks fever. It's called a 7-in-1 thermometer. And I bought one. It was down from 60 quid to 32. It was £6 more expensive than the 26 that I was expecting. I don't have an awful lot of money. I bought that one. It came through, given it my sister. We've started to use it. That's that. As you can see, we just do everything to try and help my mum. So we've already got a blood pressure monitor because I have to measure my own. I've got an Omicron one with a orthopedic armband. So it doesn't have that tight. It still goes tight on your arm, but it doesn't have those metal brackets that you tighten up with, and so they stick into your arm when it pumps up with air. So it was more expensive. In fact, that one was not in a sale and it cost me 75 quid. I remember that. So we've got a good one for my mum. And the nice thing about it is it records two different sets of readings. There's a switch. It goes A and B, patient A and B. And I set it for A for me and B for my mum. And it connects to your phone and it measures your blood, a rate and see whether things are higher and lower. So great. So we're covered really on a lot of things. So when the nurse went away and she agreed, we think you need some antibiotics. I think another course. I'll speak to the GP. The GP agreed. Yeah, I think that she needs some. The pharmacist GP said no. And so we get nothing. Now, this could be looked at as good news and bad news. Good news is, you shouldn't have a big, long range of antibiotics. There's special reasons for it. It might make you think she's probably okay. But you have to think of it and say, when you get to later years of your life, it's a bit like the injection on my mum's knee. Are you worried about steroid abuse and it could do damage to nerves when you're that old? So we came away a bit dejected. And it put a question mark if they were thinking about that, whether they're actually going to come on Monday and give my mum the injection on her other knee, which is arranged for Monday. We hope that they're turning up. But with the 2 visits by a nurse, the 2 visits that explain we think antibiotics are required, whether they will poo-poo the idea. We don't know. They haven't phoned us. So that's a concern. So we've sort of like ended the week with unknowns for my mum. And as I said, for me, when it comes to me, I've felt a bit lonely this week. Probably fatigue, bit of tiredness creeping in, work not going particularly well, insecurities of what's going on with my mum. That I've probably watched a bit of YouTube this week, seen other people talking about collaborations, which by the way made me think of the collaboration I had with Steve late last year that seemed to be put on hold, on stop. And I can understand that there were things going on in Steve's life. There's things still going on in my life. I left it just before Christmas, by the way, with a game for him to play, and that's not happened. But everybody needs to move on, and do their own thing for their own channel. And you'll notice that I've done less and less. But I tend to find that if I'm forced to do something, it makes me do it. So if I was given a game to play, I'd probably play it, and I'd find the time to do it, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's sad when you see a collaboration end, especially when it had only just started, to be quite honest. So it was nice to see people like Mainmeister come back and do an update on his channel and then do a live. And he might do another live one tonight even. I did look out for my friend 20th Century Gaming to do a live stream. He was going to do one as far as I know. But there's no point when other people are streaming, especially if they're friends, because it's like, oh, well, I can have a night off. But I was looking forward to 20th Century Gaming stream because he's been doing them on a Saturday for the last couple of weeks. So it became a sort of like a regular thing. And he usually did it just as my mother would be in bed. So it sort of like fitted into my own time. And then I was going to do a stream myself at the end after the 20th Centuries, because this goes on for a couple of hours. So it would have been around about 10 or so o'clock. And I would have done an hour myself. But, it's not a problem, this. Because of the other stream going on till 10:30 at night. I'm not going to do a stream at 11 till midnight. That's too late. So another week goes by where I haven't done anything. And that's why you haven't seen even a live stream from me last week and this week. So, yeah. But the thing that happened this week was going to the doctors. So, as you know, the 6th was D-Day for me. 2 things I was going there for. One was the one I haven't really gone into much depth with, which is a major change to my life, which is why you see some weight loss and that sort of thing. But the second one was that I had a spike in my readings when I went for a prostate test. And I did 2 blood tests, and both blood tests, one of the blood tests was high to the point where it could be cancerous. Now, when you hear the word cancer and you go, shit. But he did say when I had the test that my prostate was enlarged. And it could be to do with the tablets I'm taking and all sorts of stuff. So that's why we went for a second test, and I had another blood test. And I went down for the results on Friday. And the good news is I had dropped, and I'll give you the figures, just so you know, right? I dropped from the bad area of 4.1, 4.2, which is what started the scare, down to a 3.7 this time. And I had another blood test done to reassure that it wasn't a spike. So you have 3 tests: high, low, low, brilliant; high, low, high; 2 highs, bad. See what I mean? So I came away knowing what my PSA score is. I've learned a little bit about PSA scoring. And for the ages of people above 50, the scores should be in the 3 to 4 range. Anything above 4 in any age group, bad. So that was the spike that caused all of the, oh my God, and made me, I wouldn't say tetchy, more subdued than I normally am. And what's tried to make me feel more chipper when I can. But along with the other condition that I've got, which, by the way, I've been given new tablets for. So now I've got even more tablets to take. is a concern for me, because this particular health issue that I've got, the first 3 months are lots of testing. And in those 3 months, I lost a lot of weight. So, as anybody knows, and I've talked about it before, I was quite a heavily set person because of looking after mum, eating wrong times, eating the wrong things. But I changed my diet. I drink sparkling water, not Diet Cokes. I drink I eat half-fat cheese, use Anchor Spreadable, which is bloody horrible. Brown bread, not white bread. Bananas, I eat bananas. The odd apple, but not much. Not very good with fruit. Popcorn instead of crisps with no salt on. That sort of thing. Plus, I was under a lot of stress with my mum and things that were going on in my family. The family one, I don't really want to mention anymore, made me stop eating at all for a whole week in one section. So I went from 19.5 stone to 16 in weeks. Bad. That's incredibly bad. Don't do that, kids. Ugh. And this was going on as well during my not able to drive period. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of life things happened. And when they did my second set of tests, I'm in the good range again. Now I'm below a level that means that I might not have this condition at all. Blood pressure's under control. The blood results this time were good. The BMI indicator dropped 4 points. But they still give me a tablet. Go figure. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that is. And that's me. As I said, when we get to me and all of that sort of stuff, it always turns into a bad story. And it could be one of the reasons why I've been concentrated on my mother's health, because I'm a bit like an ostrich burying my head in the sand, thinking of my mother's health over mine. But I have to think of my own health, because if I go ill, who's looking after my mum? The sister will be. We got that, but you're cutting the care down by half. So yeah, it's one of those things. So that's my week. So I'm going to do the shout outs. There's far less of them this week, but that's fine. No problem with that. And might make this a little bit shorter. Who knows? Haven't read the questions or the comments yet, but this is the section where I turn around and thank everybody for watching. It's very humbling to know people are listening to what is basically a video diary, a legacy sort of like leave behind for when I'm gone from this planet, which could be any time. Who knows? 20 years, 2 weeks, who knows? Nobody knows where we are, do we, in our life cycle? Could get hit by a bus. Who knows? So, yeah, I tried to leave something behind, something that, I mean, it started off like that. And one of the things that happens when something happens, like your dad dies, over the years, I've still got vivid memories, pictures in my head, reenactments with my dad, conversations, all of that sort of stuff. But I tell you what, the one thing that's going is remembering his voice. Now, I'm fortunate to have a recorded message of my dad on my phone, so I can hear my dad, but it's an electronic, muffled one, but it brings back how my dad spoke to me. And it's those sort of things. It's like, think of a friend that you saw over in the States or on holiday or whatever, and how you talk to them. And now they're talking to you by email. Can you remember exactly how they spoke? Their tone, accent, all of that sort of stuff. After 10 or so years, And it is that. It's 10 years. Yeah. This September. It's difficult. So, yeah, sort of a lasting legacy is what I was trying to say. So, who knows? You don't sign into this account for 2 years, the whole lot's wiped. Which reminds me, I did start copying across my blogs to another system that my friend Colin mentioned. I've got to go back to that. I can never remember the name of it. I think it was like Opus or Oasis or something. Hopefully it'll be saved in my YouTube favorites or history, because when I did build this new PC, I copied across all of the history. So it should be there. I need to do that. I haven't even copied across the whole of 1 year yet. I got to about blog 46 or something. But it's just that you have to do it at night after my mum's gone to bed, and I'm so tired. So yeah, I need to do that because I don't want to lose this. So I'll definitely be doing that. So thanks to everybody who's watching. Thanks to everybody who watched all of last week and all of the ones before. Very humbling. I'm very grounded on my YouTube stuff. Most people will say that. They say, well, he doesn't get big-headed. I don't. No point being big-headed. I just hope sometimes I pass across some knowledge, or a bit of fun to things. Watching me play badly, say. Remembering some of the films I watched, and a little bit of background knowledge behind that can be fun. Like how you used to walk to the pictures and now we drive there and park and pay money, and how we used to get our food and we used to go to the shops and stick them in big pockets, coats we had, so you didn't pay the extortionate cinema prices, all of that sort of stuff, all comes out because of the type of age that you are and how cinema was back then to now. Their multiplexes. And how I went to my first multiplex, which actually was in Milton Keynes. Go figure, it was called The Point. I bet Seb's place is now going, oh, I remember The Point. But maybe he's not. I don't know whether he's watching. But yeah, big thank you to that. So I'm going to read out the names that came up that have left comments. And they are Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Wee Bob Art, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder, Carl Todd, and Frank Holder. But thanks to everybody that watches, and big shout out and thanks to them. It's not like they're Patreon members or anything. I'm not into subscription and shit like that. I don't deal with any of that. They're just nice people that have left a comment and want to know my opinion on something, and wish me well. Most of them do. There's very few that don't wish me well. In fact, I can't think I can name one. But you have to be careful sometimes with what you say, because that just sparks off somebody doing something. Won't bother me. I tell you what, when you have a heart attack and you've got a mother in a position that she's in and a future that doesn't look rosy, couldn't give a shit to all those people that want to cause harm. So, that's all I want to say on that. And I'm going to read out the comments shortly, but I'm just going to take a break. As you can tell, I'm starting to get a bit dry. But I'll be back in seconds. And we're back, and we've done the shout out, so we're going to go to the comments. So I've got some more water, by the way. And these are in no particular order, as everybody knows. So the first one I've got at the top is from Carl Todd. Hello, Carl. Thanks very much for commenting. He's put, hi, Del. It's been yet another hectic week, and it's close to the time that you will start recording your video. Oh, so you did it quite late. I hope this week has been better than last week, especially in regards to your mum and your work situation. It's amazing how your workplace can just easily forget all the extra hours and your commitment in the past. I'm just going to jump into some questions. Yeah, I mean, I have to look at it and go that work probably are very good, really. But yeah, I must admit, you're in the work mode type thing, and you think to yourself, do you not realize that I'm a carer? Do you not realize that I don't know the future and that I might have to go off and help, or my mind might not be thinking specifically on whether this cell's got the right figure in it or not? It's just a balancing act, and because you know that they're not living it, you think to yourself, they don't know, they don't care, you're just a number. You can sometimes think like that, but yeah, they've been very lenient and very good, really. I have to say that, really, as a statement. So you've put, I'm just going to jump into some questions you've put. And number one, I've been enjoying the new season, since it's a US show, of Fallout. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch any of it, but I wonder if you've ever played any of the Fallout games, and if so, which is your favourite? Well, the first one wasn't a question, really. It was more of a pondering, whether I've watched any of it. I watched the first season, and I bought the steelbook. In fact, I showed off the steelbook in one of my blogs, when I used to do this has arrived this week. And I got 2 steelbooks because there were 2 different covers. I enjoyed the first season. I know the second season has come and gone. I think it's been commissioned for a third. I watched the first episode of the second, but haven't had a chance to go back to it, just so that you know. But I really ought to do that, so maybe I will. I got a favourite Fallout game? I actually played the first isometric versions of Fallout. And that I really enjoyed. I bought them again in the good old games initially, which was great because they changed them later on, and that meant I've still got the original files to how they used to be when you first bought the games. I did play the first person view ones. I think the last one I played of any length was Fallout Vegas. Is that the third one? So yeah, but I haven't played much of it since. But I did buy at Christmas some of the gaps that I hadn't got in the sale because they were like $1.99 each or $2.99 or something silly. And it was around the time that I was building this PC that's down here, which is going quite well, by the way. Very few things for me to sort out, really. It's as I come across them now. So yeah, I ought to sort of like fill in the blanks a little bit more. I hope that's answered that. You continue. Number 2. Yesterday, I went to see 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. It's another film that I really enjoyed. I know that some people didn't like the ending of the previous film, but I think that this one helps to give insight into the Jimmies. I know that you tried listening to some Iron Maiden songs. Yeah, that was back in the day. But I don't think that you particularly like them. Well, that's not particularly true. I bought a box set of Iron Maiden albums. A friend of mine said, oh, you might like these. They're not what you think. They're not, that stereotypic look. And there are some quieter moments and ones that are more on the borderline of musicals, which, I went, wow, really? And the covers are gorgeous. And I went, yeah, I know about the covers. So you say, I don't think that you particularly like them. Maybe the use of their track in this film will give you a feeling to give them a go again. Anyway, what are your favourite zombie movies? Right. So it wasn't really about Iron Maiden, but just going back to Iron Maiden, it's funny because there are certain, when you're growing up, things become very stereotypical, and you go, oh yeah, don't like opera, don't like country and western, don't like folk. And in certain instances, people will say, don't like Iron Maiden, drum and bass, rap, all of that sort of stuff. I must admit, I come from a more background of classical, easy listening, pop, prog rock, that sort of thing, synthesizers, very big, and Iron Maiden are not that. So you sort of like, but as you grow older, you know, and your friends, you know, like, I mean, I know that rock is something that my friend Alan Mainmeister likes, and when I was doing a lot of the film chat stuff, heavy metal came up a lot. And of course, I only really knew soft rock. You know, I bought a cassette one year because I was doing a lot of walking, called Soft Metal It Ain't Heavy, I think it was. And it had bands and music on, you know, like they were tracks like Hearts Alone, there was Kaylee, We Built This City, you know, Starship, all of that sort of stuff. It didn't have a lot of Metallica and Iron Maiden on it. So, but it sort of like gave you that power ballad type thing. And I really enjoyed it. So when somebody said, oh, you want to try these things, I'm not bent away from giving it a try. And I bought this box set. It had about 8-10 albums in it. Got it over there somewhere. Take me some time to find it, so I won't bother looking right now, but I might show it off one day. And I listened to the first 3 albums of Iron Maiden, and I told my friend I really like this track, and he went, yeah, I thought you might. Very ballady type thing. I said, yeah, but, you know, I like the Number of the Beast and all of that sort of stuff, because I was listening to lots of stuff. And I've sort of grown an affection for it, really. It's not something I can listen to like a whole album, because by the end I think it's a bit shouty. Is that wrong to say that, really? But I much prefer something that's a mixture. So, and that's probably because I want something that goes a little bit more quieter, a little bit more power ballady. And if it's all huge electrical guitar riffs and fast drum play, it becomes so samey and so loudy and shouty that I feel like my ears are going to explode. But as I probably listen to more and more of it, I'd probably say that's the norm. It becomes the norm, you know. So, but I you know, my history is more film soundtracks, pop of the 80s, synthesizers, you know, Jean-Michel Jarre. I mean, he's come to mind in the last couple of weeks because we're entering into 40 years since the Challenger mission and the explosion, and the fact that Jean-Michel Jarre did his Houston concert, and that was hugely a big thing for that year, 1986, for me. So, yeah, and of course, Jean-Michel Jarre's father is Maurice Jarre, and Maurice Jarre did the soundtracks to Lawrence of Arabia, you know. So, of course, anybody that sort of like has some sort of like history with a famous father that did film stuff, I'm into, just to listen to see what their take is. Like I suppose a lot of people would be with Julian Lennon and his famous father John. You know, you just go, oh, I wonder what his music's going to be like. You know, is he going to have the talent of his father? And I hate it when they say that, talent of his father. He's going to have his own talent, going to have his own way of doing things. He's going to want to carve his own niche without having a famous father, you know, interrupting these things. So, you know, it's a bit like that. But your question is favourite zombie films. And that's a difficult one because...
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Oh, thank you, Alexa. Alexa,
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Alexa just told me because she couldn't help me with something. But I grew up with the sort of George A. Romero type zombie film. So Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, you know, Night of the Living Dead. So, you know, those were the zombie films for me, along with just the film Zombie or Zombie Flesh Eaters. But hasn't it exploded now? I mean, it's everywhere. It's in your games, it's in TV, it's in everything. So we've mentioned 28 years later, but for me, 28 Days Later was a good film. And we've had the stayed point ones, you know, Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead, I don't know. You know, those stale points. Warm Bodies, I think, was one. They were fun to watch, but I just don't count them as anything these days. I did like Wreck and Wreck 2. Those were quite good. And if there's one I don't know whether people know too much about called Cargo. And that I liked. You might want to look that one up. I don't think it's too many years ago. I think it was like 2018, 2019. That was a good one. Enjoyed that. But on a recent talk with Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and I'm sorry if I keep bringing him up, but he's such a great bloke when we do a live thing. They've all told me to get this film called Train to Busan. And I'm in two minds, not because I don't want to see it, but because you can buy a trilogy, or you can buy a one-off of it, and you can get a steelbook, and then you decide, do you want the 4K or the Blu-ray, and you've never even seen it. And I keep meaning to see it, and then I'll make my mind up, oh yeah, I got to have the 4K of that. You know what I mean? But if I buy the 4K, I might put it on and go, why did I buy the 4K? I could have got away with a Blu-ray and saved myself some cash. So, yeah, I've got to get around to that. Train to Busan. And then, of course, I was talking about TV. So we've had The Walking Dead, haven't we? The Fear of the Walking Dead. All of those. And those were fun at the beginning, and then they became formulatic. And then even in Marvel, you've got the What If range, and you've got Marvel Zombies. And this all, so I've known about zombies for years and years and years, and the cartoons aren't too bad. In fact, they can go sometimes a little bit further than the films ever will. Terror Planet, was that one? Something like that. It was a Quentin Tarantino one that I saw as well. That was very gory. But yeah, hopefully I've given some names there, but it's mostly the George R. Romero ones, or then there's the Return of the Living Dead range, World War Z, and you've even got I Am Legend of a way, including Omega Man and Last Man on Earth. So you could either count them as vampire films or zombie films. So yeah, it's a big subject, and one that I think I've given some names. I think that's good. You got a third question off. Oh my God, I'm spending some time with you, Carl, aren't I? Number 3. Do you have any thoughts about the deal between Sony and TCL, where TCL will take a 51% stake in Sony TVs from 2027? It's funny that you mentioned that, because I watched this chap repair TVs, and he talks about the fact that all these TVs, Hisense and that, they're built in certain plants, and they just use cheaper parts. TCL, they're generally considered the mid and low range. Sony still have a 49% interest, But the thing about it is it's the patents. Now, this is where it goes a bit complex, because my opinion is that Sony have never been the name that they used to be. If you ever went into a store in the 2000s and you talked about Trinitrons and that sort of stuff, they would tell you, well, got a little story to tell you about that, because it's only the surroundings and the electronic parts that make this a Sony TV. The panel itself, probably an LG. They don't really make that. It's the electronics around it that make the picture so much better, because the same charge goes into it, same amount of pixels go into it. It's the electronics that are around the bezel and the internal mechanics that make it a Sony. So it's not a true Sony anymore. It's a bit like it's a half breed, I suppose, is one way of looking at it. So to me, what Sony are doing is they're giving their patents away, because TCL used to do, I don't know, what's the word? They used to do sort of like QLED, mini LED stuff, and they didn't do OLED much. Sony did quite a lot of OLED TVs. So if they're giving their TVs away to build them at the TCL plants, then they're giving TCL the open door to go into the OLED market. That means that they'll attack Panasonic and a lot of others. And of course, the market share for Samsung, LGs, in some way Hisense, which I don't rank at all, Hisense, bloody hell, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole, means that the market will probably become a bit more muddled in the mid-range. But they've got a 49% stake still in it. But it does, I think that the reason for it is so they can concentrate more on the game consoles and the entertainment business like film and TV. So that money must be in the billions. Giving it to TCL means that they give them a cash injection to do that. But it's a sad day if you ever like Sony stuff, I suppose. But to me, I don't buy Sony. So I haven't bought Sony in a long time, since knowing that about the panels. So, yeah, it's a nothing thing, I suppose, really, Carl. Thanks very much for your question, though. You put all the best to your mum. I'll definitely pass that on. Thanks very much. Now, as I say, no particular order, and salute to you. We get to Frank Holder. Good old Frank. Nice supporter of him. He comes back every now and again and talks, and it's brilliant. Always watching, he says, in the past, so brilliant. He goes, "Hi, Del. Hope you and your mother are well and in fine form as possible. Do you have any plans re game streaming?" So that's your first sort of question. And I have to answer that in the way that I've answered it already in the weeks past. And that is, it's very opportunist. As I mentioned at the beginning, I was going to do a stream last night and I was going to do a stream the week before. Because I'd started doing some Saturday streams of this film called Belmont. And both times other people have done streams that have gone, well, not this week then, might do. And of course, during the week, it's virtually impossible. And I've tried to concentrate on writing down some ideas. By the way, I've been using a dictaphone to write ideas down for things that I could continue with. And the two things that are definitely still going to be doing are my film shorts and game shorts. Maybe the collaboration will continue. I don't know. That's an unknown. And I'll definitely be doing some one-off specials. I've got some of those written down, and they're going to happen. So streaming, up in the air. But it's a good way of very opportunist, I can get something out there. So watch this space. You put also, I have 2 questions for you, if you wouldn't mind me asking 2. Of course I don't. My God. First question would be, what DVD box set was your biggest ever bargain buy? Mine was this very week. I spotted the complete MacGyver box set containing 39 DVDs, and it was sealed and like new. How much did it cost me? £20. The funny thing is, I don't really like it, but I couldn't leave it there at that price. You're quite right, you can't. And it's funny because I'm not quite sure what my cheapest would be. I'd have to open up my CLZ movies catalogue database because I put the prices in there and what I bought them at. But the cheapest would probably be used or like new from charity stores. But I've had so much as well given to me. My friend Denny is great, you know. He's promised to send me some Death Wish stuff shortly, but he sent me his whole collection of what was it, Time Tunnel, or no, it was Mission Impossible, which was great of him, and that cost nothing, so there's cheap, isn't it? But I've bought some stuff from HMV and Amazon and all that sort of stuff. There was one box set. I think it was the Lord of the Rings. They came in free tin sets of steelbooks. It was 6 months after they'd been released, and I got them for 30 quid each, down from I think 70 or 80 or even 100 for them. So I got both sets for about 60 quid, and that would have been £200. I even bought the Harry Potter tin set. It was all of them. That was a £200 set. I bought that when it was about 85 quid. It was in a Black Friday sale, so that would have been cheap. I bought the Transformer movies cheaply, but I think that was because I bought it with a voucher. I didn't think I got it cheap at all. I had a voucher. Going away from DVDs, there's that War of the Worlds. Do you remember that? I bought a War of the Worlds box set that would have cost £280. It came broken. I wanted a replacement. They would only give me a refund. I said, look, you've got it in stock. I could buy it again and send this back. He went away and said, you can keep it and we'll refund you. So I got my money back and I got the box set to keep. Didn't have to send it back to them. So that was zero. And it was 280 quid just because it's got a rip in it. But I wasn't prepared to have a rip on something that cost 280 odd quid. So you can imagine, I was elated. I was like, wow, thanks very much. Cheers. You know, brilliant. But I think I've bought box sets in the past. I remember buying the Columbo box set. That was cheap. But everything around Doctor Who, Stargate, House, 24. I bought all of those when they were coming out. They cost me a big amount of money. So did the Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyagers. Bought all of those by individual years. They were 80 odd pounds for just on the DVDs. Heroes on HD DVD was one of the most expensive sets I bought at like 110 quid for a failed format. And I bought a lot of boutique sets. Boutique labels like Arrow and Eureka and stuff. Those have been expensive. And this year it's been none of those. Can't afford them. Got a sick mum. And I've got to think about saving. And every time I try and save, something else crops up, like having to buy my mum that ear thermometer this week, or the council tax, or whatever. All of that sort of stuff comes in. So I'm not saving at all. And I'm approaching the point where my car MOT is due and a service. And I know I'm going to need 4 tyres. And each tyre is going to cost me 110 quid. They're going to be the Continental type. I ain't got the money saved. I did have. And anymore. So, yeah, it's a troublesome time, which makes me not thinking too much about where the money's coming from. I think one of the major reasons my sister and I keep it on is because we know talking about money causes problems. Don't talk about money. We'll get on fine if we don't talk about money. So that's what we're not doing. So there you go. So I haven't really given you much of an answer, but I've given you something on that. Second question is, why do rich people never face justice? Look at former Prince Andrew. Look at Trump, both guilty of crimes that would have you and me in jail, but these people, no. Was there ever a time where justice was fair and the same for everyone? Or has it always been like this? Oh, and I'm on holiday next week, and my wife has told me I'm painting the house. Bang goes your holiday. That's made me laugh. You can see this smile on my face. Do rich people face jail? Very rarely. And I suppose it's money and power, isn't it? What you can get away with, and smart lawyers and clauses. More money you got, the better your chance of a lawyer, the better chance that he'll find some wrangle to get you out of it. Yeah. When did they ever face the law? How far back would you go? I don't know. You've got presidents and prime ministers, they've all got these things called impeachments and all that sort of stuff. But look at Nixon. Should have gone to jail, resigned, caught. Nothing, really. Destroyed him. Didn't go to jail, did he? I suppose many people are going to phone up and say that's not an example, or that didn't happen with Nixon and the Watergate affair and all of that sort of stuff. I'm not that big on that sort of history. If you go back to Washington and John Adams in the States, the courts were, a lot of American law came from British law. Even when they got their own independence, it still sort of like mirrors our own. And when you look at slavery, did any of these captains face their crimes? No, they didn't. So it could go back further and further and further. And then when you look at Henry VIII and his courts, hangings, knocking your heads off and all that sort of stuff, manipulated the law. Parliament came after the Tudor period, sort of around there was Parliament around Tudors, but it's one of those things where we became a democracy for about 7 years after the Stuarts, I think, where we never had a king. That's where possibly a lot more bringing rich people to trial happened. But I can't think of any. Nothing really comes to mind. It's an interesting question. And the only reason I know about any of this sort of stuff is my recent memory in watching historical films about the Tudors and the Stuarts and all of those. So, and you only see it from a point of view of the kings, not normal life for peasants, I suppose you want to call them. But I would say I don't think there's really ever been a time documented where the rich haven't gotten out of something because of money. So I'll say that. And I don't think I'll be wrong too much in saying that. Salute, my friend. Thanks very much. And your holiday? I'm so sorry. You got to paint the house. Shit. And you've only got a week. Better take a couple more off, mate. House? Jesus. Got to paint the outside as well. Ooh. Well, here we go. So we'll move on. I'll have a bit of water. And we get to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, my friend Ian, who I do a live with Wednesday. Got a fantastic channel. You'll hear about that a little bit later on. But such a stout supporter of me. I have such fun. I don't know where I'd be on Wednesdays, to be quite honest. If I didn't have that, it'd be a very long week. Very long week. Be terrible. Wednesday breaks it up so well for me. So good. Perfect day. Midweek. Brilliant. Fantastic. So what's my friend Ian got to say? Let's have a listen. Hi, Delboy. I hope you are okay and your mum is now feeling a bit better. I know how worrying these things can be. To be honest, over the last few days, I haven't felt very good. The usual problem of feeling cold all the time. I've had to really force myself to do things, even getting up out of bed. I've managed to record 2 videos for my channel, the Doctor Who and the X-File reviews. I still have to record my What I've Watched video. It won't be as many as normal. Good to see your pickups, both historical films that I love. Yeah, because last week I mentioned about A Man for All Seasons and so forth, and I got round to watching those. Brilliant films, loved them. The best film that stands out is a first-time watch is Hostiles, 2017, directed by Scott Cooper, who is best known for the Springsteen documentary in 2025. The film starred Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike. The film started out looking at the way atrocities affect people and then developed into how forgiveness and redemption can take place. It was a wonderful modern-day Western, and it shows how this genre is far from dead. Brilliant. Love Westerns. I want to sort of look out some of these things. I think you did mention it, that film, and I think I wrote it down. So my question this week is, is there actions that we as individuals and society can never forgive? Is the whole concept of a religion that forgives evil mass murderers if they follow their God just ridiculous and wrong? Just thought I would give you an easy question. LOL. It's an interesting question. I will say that. I said last week, I dare say on my deathbed, one of the last lines will be praying to God or something. I'm not a religious person. It's just religion has been there. I've been to Sunday school. I sang in choirs. I did go to my church, St. Mary's, to do some keyboard stuff. When I was in music class, this was at my school, my local school. So it wasn't something I did in my own spare time. So family would know about it just by me talking, but not because they saw me go. We even had religious sort of like camps that in the summer we sort of went to, sort of C of E type things. So, but I've not been religious other than big moments of my life. When my dad died, going to the grave, I'll go and speak to my dad, talk a little bit about my beliefs, how things are. Yeah. But mass murderers that rely on their religion, I know where you're coming from. It's a difficult subject for me to talk about. From my point of view, it's totally alien to me. You know, kamikazing to kill somebody off, and that you'll be rewarded with as many women and as much food and wealth as you'll have in the afterlife. Bollocks to all of that. And then in the past, when people have been hanged and they say, have God have mercy on my soul, as their last final statement. And going back again to Tudor periods with, you know, Anne Boleyn and all of that sort of stuff, and you know, worshipping the king by saying the king is a good man, and I hope God is looking down at me, and all of this sort of stuff. And we can go to people like people that killed the person who killed John Lennon. Can we ever forgive? No. We can't forgive. You've taken lives. Doesn't matter whether they're large or small. In our understanding of who they were, it's a life. They had a mum, they had a dad, might have had wives, kiddies taken away because of your beliefs or whatever. No. I don't think we ever. I think it's ridiculous, yes, and wrong in many ways. It is an opinion. If I thought about it deeper, I could probably split these up into sections of the different types of things you mean. But I think I've given enough. You've then said all the best and have a reet grand time. And thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed to him, please go over. My God, the man deserves it. Sticking by me, for God's sake, listening to my load of waffle on a Wednesday. He's far more eloquent and knowledgeable. More knowledgeable than he thinks. He says I'm around because he likes me, he supports me, and he says my knowledge is second to none. And I'd agree with some of that, maybe Doctor Who, Star Trek, that sort of stuff. But my brain's not like it used to be. It's not as sharp as it used to be. Me, I just like going on and enjoying myself. And with that, thanks very much and salute to you. Please go over there. But you'll all I'm saying to you is you'll have a reet grand time just going through his stuff. See how I got that reet grand time in, Ian? Hope you enjoyed that. And we move on to the next one. Wee Bobber. Fantastic artist, you know. All I see is drawings. He's got his own channel, talks about movies and stuff. He's doing some stuff at the moment at work, so it's harder for him to do some stuff at the moment, which is why you don't see me mentioning him, because he's not turning up in my alerts at the moment for doing anything. But that doesn't mean you can't look at the history. My God, you see how many hundreds of videos that will be there. Brilliant. So what have we got? He's put, still watching along with 30 minutes to go, but figured I better get my comment in before I forget. It's good to listen along and hear how life is going. I'm pretty sure I used or use of ServiceNow at work, but the IT side of things is always changing with different names of portals, etc. Yeah, there will be amount of different names that comes out. ServiceNow was introduced to me 4 or 5 years ago. It is the right way to do assets and the life cycle of an asset through depreciation and eventual destruction or selling on. All good stuff. We used Excel and all that sort of stuff in the probation service. The wrong way to do things. The only thing we did right, I think, was the service desk and the service desk software for knowledge base entries. That was part and parcel of what ServiceNow is. It's great for that. Anyway, question for next time. I watched The Lighthouse today. Brilliant film, by the way. I got that on Steelbook. Willem Dafoe. Yeah, brilliant. And it is weird, but interesting film. It is a 4:3 ration. You've put ration? And shot in black and white. It's definitely black and white. Oh, I see what you mean. Right, 4:3. Yeah, it's square. More something that you'd see at the TV. I think it's got a anamorphic 16:9, actually. You can watch it on without stretching the 4:3 ratio on that one. Black and white or filtered that way. Not sure I liked it, but certainly didn't dislike it. It is a movie that I think I will have in my mind for a while. Yeah, because it does get into your mind. It's about madness, mostly. A couple of people living on this rock in a lighthouse, black and white, weird things going on, loneliness, all sorts of things come into that film. But you've put, can you name any movies which are a bit on the fringe or of popularity, but have stuck with you due to something unique in them? All the best to you and your family. Wow. Christ, I've got to think now. And this isn't things like a shock ending. This is the subject matter, I suppose. like Lighthouse is about madness, really, and loneliness. There's a film called, is it On the Fringe? The Skin I Live In. About a scientist that sort of like creates a new form of skin. Makes you think about your body a little bit. So that's one. One that's not on the fringe is Substance. That came out 2 years ago. That had Demi Moore. And taking a drug that made her young again. She crawled out of her skin and then climbed back into it within 24. Weird film. That's probably an interesting one, but not a fringe film. There's a film called Enemy, and that's about a doppelganger. So think about a doppelganger. You've got an identical twin. What you can get up with being a doppelganger. It's called Enemy. That's a good one. I think that intrigued me to the point of I was questioning all the different subject matters in that film. And then there's another one called Primer. That's what it's called, Primer. That's a time travel one. Yeah, that was an interesting film. Primer. It's going to be difficult for me to think of many more. There's probably loads, but they're probably going to be there not for the thought-provoking different subjects in them. More to do with a shock ending or something shocking in the center or the beginning, or had you talking, more than the psychological nature of things. So we'll end with that one for Wee Bob Art. Salute, my friend, and please go over and subscribe if you can. Everything's in the description of this particular blog. And we move to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, and see what he's got to say. Thatcher started something that cascaded into what we have today. Privatisation. Right, I know where he's coming from now. Privatisation meant priorities being shifted from customers to maximising profit. Customer service is mostly dead and will not likely recover as more people grown into this way of thinking. Railways, this is where this comes from because of last week, railways were in serious trouble when privatisation happened, and it did improve things immensely, but it was geared for profit from the outset, with the leasing companies having the biggest cut of the cake. We've been under government control since Crowless Amy, in brackets Amy, handed back the franchise during the pandemic. I'm not going to give my views on that in public, though, at least not for the next 6 years. Yeah, while you're working and you're pensionable age. Totally get that. Yeah, privatisation, the rail. First coming profitable for West Midland Travel last week. Go and watch that. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Very thought-provoking. You've then got, sorry to hear about work being arsey. I hope your mum's infection clears up. And it was nothing more than that. Sending my regards as always. Yeah, well, you know a little bit more now, Colin. It's a bit more complex than that. I have 2 ultra-wide monitors and a standard 1080p. These are only 2560 by 1080. So that's 14:4, isn't it? Yeah, and not really wide. Curved type. So 2 side by side are still useful. I bet they are. I hope your graphic card can take it. I think you've mentioned you've got a 4070. I remember right, a 4060. You're on the cusp, aren't you, in the 60 range? They advise you to have 80s and 90s. You know, whether that be 40s, 30s, 50s. That's 50 90s, 40 90s, 30 90s. They've all been the top range, the 90 range, along with the Foundation series cards and the production model cards. They cost $1,000 a piece. But the faster your card, the better the refresh rate of those ultra wides. So you continue. I can absolutely assure you, I won't be praying when I am near my end. I've accepted that this is all we have, and I won't turn to desperation when it's my time. This does not, however, mean I push my views onto others. If you have faith, then good on you. It's all personal after all, and it is very much so. You weren't alone in offer of a capture card for our mutual friend. I know I now have an internal card, so my external devices are just backups. Yeah, and this is what I was looking at when I was mentioning that. And yeah, Steve, he must have been inundated. He's such a nice, likable guy, the little sod. And just my joke. And your question is a positive one this week. What are you actually looking forward to in the near future? Do you know what? Not a lot. It's very difficult for me to think of future with everything that's going on in the past. My therefore answer is very little in the future fills me with anything. Maybe a collaboration might change that. We'll see. Salute, my friend. Thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed to him, again, look in the description of this email. Fantastic channel. And we get to the last comment, which is Steve's Gaming. And he's just put one line. Sorry, Dale, total brain fart from me. 1967 was the year of the Apollo fire. So I've been 59 years, not 67. Sorry, I guess my brain and my fingers got in a muddle. No, that's fine, matey. Absolutely brilliant. You know full well that I know how much knowledge you have on our space journey. Going to the moon, our orbits, the satellites going into space, like the Voyager missions. They're all in your brain. They're all bringing you such joy. And that's the end of the comments and everything to do with it. I'm just going to say salute to my friend Steve. And yeah, I hope your channel continues to grow, matey. What a great channel you have. And I'm just going to take a quick break and get a little bit of splash of water on me. And I'll be back and reading out some more stuff. Won't be long.
And we're just going to be moving on to what I've watched on YouTube. But just to go back to Steve, he put, sorry, Dale, total brain fart from me. 1967 was the year of the Apollo fire. You shouldn't feel bad about all of that. Absolutely wonderful. My brain totally gone. I wish you well. I watch your channel. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm glad I managed to read out something that didn't go. So it'd have been nice to know what you thought about the rest of the blog, but you've done so much of that for me in the past, doesn't really matter. So absolutely marvelous. So salute, my friend. And just like what I've mentioned before, please go and subscribe. Absolutely fantastic channel. Cheers me up every week just watching a friend of mine playing games. I mean, absolutely marvelous. It's his passion. Loves it. He's so knowledgeable though on music. You know, Steve, maybe you could do something on that. And your TV knowledge. Wow. You could definitely break out into things like that. So just some thoughts. Anyway, watched on YouTube. Anybody that knows me knows there are 4 that I specifically watch every week, which is where I put this particular aspect of things. That's This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. Look those up just to see what I'm talking about, if you like. This Week in Retro, they usually have 3 subjects, some housekeeping and a question. The 3 subjects were who collects the collections, a take on General Remastered, and Noob or Hater. Interesting subjects. I think I like the bit on the remastered because it was about Mike Singleton, which is a name from my past. Lords of Midnight and a few Midwinter and a few other games. It's weird because I didn't really play those things too much and played them later on in my life through emulation, because Lords of Midnight was on my particular machine at the time, the Commodore 64, but I considered it a Spectrum game. Like many ports that went over to the Commodore 64, I looked at certain stuff that was on the Spectrum, like Turner Nog and thought that's a Spectrum game. And doesn't work that well on the Commodore 64. And you looked at it and it's because it looked the same. Very few games changed much. Didn't use the individual's machine's powers or capabilities, as they call it. They did on certain ones. I'm just saying in general. When I mentioned those games in particular, Turner Nog and Lords of Midnight. And I suppose it's the same with Midwinter because the Atari ST was much like the Commodore 64 one. The Amiga one. But it's nice. They're talking about remastered and they're doing a PC version, which it had, but it's done in the style of the Amiga and the Atari ST, so it's flat shaded, much faster, frame rate, that sort of thing. So I might go back and look at that. Tecmo was about the best lava lamp. So you may think of that as going, oh, what a boring subject that is. It's quite actually soothing to watch. And I used to have a lava lamp. It was one of the things I wanted. It's definitely a 70s thing. Reminds me of the days of the Tomorrow People. If anybody ever sees the end credits of the Tomorrow People, you'll know what I mean. I wanted one as a kiddie. And it's amazing that you can do these lava lamps now with tea lights. Yeah, candles. Who thought? So, yeah, that was interesting for me. The Gadget Show, it was a weird one this week. The subject on one of the videos was, is Apple about to reinvent the foldable phone? Now, I've got a foldable phone. It's by Samsung. It's been out for years, right? Every single capability that Apple are doing, Samsung's done. Couldn't see anything new. I was going, how are they reinventing anything? In fact, Samsung now have brought out a trifold. So it'd have been, they're reinventing it if it's stretched out by some type of cloth material that makes it like a projector screen, something like that, or hologram, or something like this. But no, didn't see anything. Didn't get that one at all. Chronologically Gaming, it's always fun to watch him every week. It's a shame that he doesn't do more. He used to do 3 to 4 videos a week. He just does one now, which means we're stuck in 1982 and December, and it looks like we're going to be there till March, April. I don't know quite how far we're in, because when you look at years and months of 1982, you don't know quite the exact date. You know, like, oh yeah, this was the 7th of February. Was it? 7th of December, whatever. Right? So, it looks like very much, and being December, it's Christmas. So there was more video stuff coming out, video games, in that period than any other month, because everybody wanted you to have it under their Christmas tree, that game. So I think we're going to be there for a while. So moving on from that, the other stuff I watch that I just bunch up together that aren't, people I know or I watch religiously every week and all of that. 8-Bit Guy, he did How the Tandy Color Computer Works. That was very interesting to me because I like all of these ones that are, how did this work? How did that work? So that was great. There was a channel called Short Circuit. He did something because it actually cropped up on the Thursday after my Wednesday live with Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And we were talking about projectors. And funnily enough, straight away on the Thursday, something came up. It must have been watching. Thank you very much,
YouTube for watching Ian Hill, the Ramblings channel. It was the actual episode was called "Rich People Will Hate This Projector," the Jaime Horizon 20 Max, and it's quite an expensive projector. It's $1,700 odd, but that's cheap. When we were talking about on Ian Hill, the Ramblings channel, projectors costing nearly $4,000. So this is half the price, and it does a lot of the things that high-end projectors do. I'm not sure if it's a laser projector, but it definitely had pixel shifting and all sorts of stuff that you only get in high-end projectors. So that was interesting to me, and amazing that it came out on the Thursday, which is why I mentioned it. Then Trev Icon 64. Now he's sort of a friend. He comes up in 20th Century Gaming's channel a lot. He does some graphics for a company called, I think, Cytronic. I think that's their name. He was showing off some of his work on the latest game called Impossible Mission 3. And if anybody knows me, they'll know that one of the standout games on the Commodore 64, whether you like the game or not, right, came out from Epix, was a game called Impossible Mission. And it had a guy that was somersaulting around and searching stuff. They've done an Impossible Mission 3, a sort of like a homage on what the third game might look like if they'd have done it. And it's looking very good, you know. Some of the comments that I saw in there were a bit harsh. Somebody put, "I'm sure that the original one had smoother scrolling when you went up and down the lifts." I'm going, what? Are you serious about this? I mean, they've just added all this extra stuff in it. And you're talking about scrolling. It's got a lot more detail in the cutaway for the Earth. And how do you know that that wasn't because it was captured bad? Might have been captured at 30 frames, but it's a 60 frames a second game or whatever, right? Don't really measure things in frames per second myself, but you know what I'm trying to get at, a 60 hertz, 50 hertz version or whatever. You don't know. I was looking at what they've added and what they've kept and all of this. Some people, they just want to nitpick, I think, a little bit. Moving on. Thanks very much, Trev Icon, by the way, 64. Great stuff. Sorry I didn't get to chat to you this Saturday on Mark's 20th Century Gaming stream. I'd like to have talked to you a bit more about Impossible Mission 3. Moving on, we have Timeline. It's called Timeline World History Documentaries. That's the name of the channel. And it was about King Arthur and Camelot. Now, most people think of King Arthur and Camelot, fictitious, story-driven, didn't exist, etc., etc. Now, there was a fund and a famous couple of archaeologists that set out to prove that Camelot was a place and that King Arthur existed. And this was at a time where England didn't have one ruler to rule it all. There were individual lords that separated Mercia and all of this sort of stuff. And apparently in Shropshire there is a hill called Arthur's Chair. And there was a famous Broadway sort of like play thing called Camelot. And they were asking questions before the film came out of this famous Broadway play. Did Camelot exist? Was there a King Arthur? So this archaeologist went, do you know what? Why don't we prove it? And they settled on where in England could this place have been, because it's been cited at numbers of places. And they settled on Shropshire. There's a street called Camelot View or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. Arthur's Chair, there's a hill and all of this sort of stuff. It made sense that it could be there. And there is a hill, and it looks like it had ramparts. It's probably a place that the Romans used. And when they got some money up together and they dug there for 15, 20 years, and they proved that it had a great hall there.
pottery from the Mediterraneans, which basically means it's from the Dark Ages, and and it could have been a place that the Romans used. And if Arthur ever did exist, and it was on that plot, it would have been a reused Roman castle. Interesting. They stopped digging there in the 80s, I think. Inconclusive. They spent quite a lot of money, but they learned an awful lot about stuff that they carried on into other archaeological digs. So it was a very interesting documentary. I watched it. It was about an hour long. Another channel I watched was Retro Legends Universe. Never come across this before, but it came up because of the subject matter, which the episode was called Sharp X68000, the console that wasn't a console, which is strange to me because the X68000 was never marketed as a console. It was a computer, always was, and it was used as a development arm as well for Capcom, which again didn't make consoles. They made arcade games for the arcades. What's the console side of this thing? Other than, at this particular period of time, and we are before the Mega Drive, we're talking NES days and Master System days, it did things as powerful as a Neo Geo. Which again, a console, but more the arcade at home experience, and cost as much to show that. It came up because I love the Sharp X68000. It would have been the machine that I'd have sold my Amigas for before I moved away from the Amigas and moved into PC. I would have bought the X68000 like a shot, but it was sold in Japan only. And it was bloody expensive, and I don't know Japanese. So it never happened. That's the beauty of where we are, folks. You can now get a mini version of the X68000. You can emulate it. You can play all the games that were on it. You can mimic its operating system and have a go yourselves. The Mister does it. It's one of my favourite go-to things on my Mister is going to the X68000. So that was brilliant. And the last channel in this section was Yesterday's America. It was the rise and fall of the Alan Parsons Project. So a bit of a music thing on this side as well. Yes, Alan Parsons Project. Now, I was heavily into them. When I was during my prog rock era, I was listening to Rick Wakeman, yes. Arthur, the hammer, the sword and the anvil. All of that stuff. Alan Parsons Project, Scratch That Itch like ELO. And War of the Worlds. Very instrumental type stuff like Mike Oldfield, but different. And this documentary goes into the fact that they were a band without a frontman. There was no live broadcasts of Alan Parsons Project. And it's because the lead man was a sound engineer on the Beatles albums. And he did an experiment to say, could you be a band without actually having a band itself? You could get some session players in, do an album, there you are. What do you think? And they sold 50 million odd copies of their albums, and I was one of them. I was lapping it up. There was a lot of wranglings going on, though, in the background. They wanted to turn one of their albums, I think, into a Broadway play. Caused a lot of headaches between the two main people that set up the Alan Parsons Project. Sorry, I was just fiddling about with my belt on the back of my trousers. It was digging into me with this chair. So that was an interesting one, and I didn't know that much about the Alan Parsons Project. I do like watching YouTube videos where it fills me with new stuff. It's interesting, this. There was a discussion going on in a live stream that I watched even this week saying, oh, I think you ought to do this, right? And it was about, I don't know, playing games in your favourite year or something. But that was the year that was type things.
they're great and I love them and they're really, really enjoyable. But they've been done a lot and they don't tend to go into specific histories without giving me what I already know. You see what I mean? Oh, here's 10 tracks from 1984 and all the 10 tracks will be the top 10 selling of that year. What about the rest of the stuff? Talk about some of the most obscure stuff. That's what I mean. And I'm not saying that that's happened, but what I'm saying is a lot of people that embrace that don't do that. Or they'll talk about something that I know already. Like, man, I learn nothing from them. I like the idea because they're personal to that person and I get to know what that person liked. But they don't go into the ones that, like, did you know this? And I go, no, didn't know it all. Because you're talking to me about stuff that everybody knows. It's what annoys me about those. Have you seen those videos? Have you seen them on YouTube? These really annoy me, right? There was one I watched yesterday. It said 25 facts that you never knew about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I watched this for 45 minutes. No word of a lie. 45 minutes. Every single fact I knew. Every single thing. There was one thing I learnt from it. Now, you could turn around and say, yeah, but you know, you've watched so many other videos. But why has this guy put never? You've never heard of. Bollocks. Hate them. Really starting to, I won't use that word hate, sorry, dislike them. Because it's false advertising. How do you know what I know? And they're starting to turn into that thing that I don't like as well. Those reaction videos, you know, the ones that come up and say, yeah, I mean, I'm from an era where I listen to rap. So I'm going to do a first time reaction to music. And they'll come up one week and they'll say, yeah, I'm going to listen to this bloke called Elvis. Never heard of him. Right? I haven't heard of any track from Elvis. And I'm going, what? Bollocks. Of course you bloody heard of Elvis. He's been in adverts, films, TV, specials, music, the sound. You know, he was the king of rock and roll. You could not have heard one of his songs. I'm sorry. You're telling me I'm supposed to believe you've never heard of him, right? Now, haven't heard this song, possibility. Heard of him? Of course you have. Don't try and cheat, right? Bad, just bad. Moving away, we now moved into more stuff about people that I know. They've got channels and I watch their stuff more religiously than that first section. It's film, TV and soundtrack on YouTube. The first one is Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And what have I said about Ian Hill, The Ramblings already? Go over and look at his channel. But look at the stuff he's brought out this week. Right, here we go. It's always a mouthful. Takes up a big chunk of my pad. Right at the top. Top 5 historical films, 2010 to 2016. It's probably 2017 today. Go figure. Doctor Who review, Web Planet. So he's doing his Doctor Who review. X-Files review, season 5, episode 17. So he's nearing the end of season 5, moving into season 6. SFX magazine review. That's February 2026, which I always enjoy because I don't buy that magazine anymore. I did buy it at one point. But it's interesting to know what the style of sort of journalism is now in magazines, because how many magazines are out there these days that we buy? We all read it on the internet, don't we? What I have watched, episode 4. So he finally did get round to doing his what I've watched, and it was bumper. It won't be as much my arse. And then live with me on a Wednesday. What more could you ask for? Got me. Second time in the week. Brilliant. Fantastic stuff. Absolutely marvellous. If you're not subscribed to him, I don't know what's up with you. But anyway, moving on. We've got a couple more friends. Just Joshings, which used to be Through the Lens. He did a couple of reviews on films. Sam Raimi is back with his film Send Help. And Primate and 90s movies are back.
conversation. One of those was a shorts, one of those is a video. Always interesting to hear Josh's take on films, because he's very much like Barry Norman. He looks at films differently than a lot of other people, which is why I go to him, because they'll look at things a little bit more abstract than just going, oh, the picture was like this and the music was done by this guy. He'll say, oh, the music didn't work here or there or whatever. A little bit more backbone, a little bit more meat to the bone, you know what I mean? So that was great. Then there was Movie Collector. Watch his channel now and again, mostly now and again. He used to be a projectionist. So he did Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, which is a film that's coming out this year, from 16 millimeter to IMAX. He wanted to talk a little bit about how 16 millimeter work and how that helps with IMAX and how you can convert that type of stuff. It's all about the frame and how what an IMAX frame looks like, how it's used, why it's such a premium format, that sort of thing. So that was brilliant. Then we get to Commode on Film podcast. They were deliberating, is 28 years later, The Bone Temple a worthy sequel? Taking into effect that the 28 years later is a good film, because some people hated it, didn't like it at all, as mentioned earlier on in one of the comments. So that was good. Really enjoyed that. I like a deliberation. Goes into a lot of detail. Then we got Commode and Mayo's Take. Now, this is Simon Mayo. He used to have a radio station, and he used to have Commode on, and they used to talk about film reviews. So they now do it as a podcast rather than on radio, which is a shame, because I'd like it on radio again. But they reviewed Melania, Hamlet, Send Help, It's Never Over, Chronologically of Water. Those are the reviews for this week at the cinema. And then Box Office Top 10 and Top 10 Dad Jokes. So that was great. Enjoyed all of them. I like the jokes. I also liked some of the reviews in there, especially Send Help, because I could sort of like match it against Josh's channel that I mentioned earlier. So that was brilliant. And then I got my friend Muckman-Movies. He did his January pickups, because we're in February. So he wanted to talk about what he picked up in January. I was mentioned. That was nice. That was out the blue. Don't get mentioned an awful lot. That's because of Once Upon a Time in America that I picked up several weeks ago. And so it was interesting to know what he thought. And he mentioned me by name. Because he learnt about it through me, it would seem. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but if it is, brilliant. I'm glad I passed on some of my knowledge. And I'll just take a glass of water because we're on the last page. And the last one is Game and Tech YouTube. So this is all my friends that are part of the Discord way of life. People I've talked to in the past, etc., etc. And we've got 3 of some of these that I class as really great friends. Down the Rabbit Hole I do, Rabbit's Retro Gaming I do, Steve's Gaming I do. They're all people that I know. I've already mentioned about Mark and Colin, Mainmeister. They're all great people. And I've spoken to them personally, individually, by myself, on the phone or whatever. So Down the Rabbit Hole did 2 videos. He did Vectrex Blitz. That's the game, Blitz. That's an American football game. And the actual episode was called Vectrex Blitz because I want to play American football. That's all it was called. I don't know too much about the American football, but I do know the Super Bowl, I think, is today, between the Patriots and the C something or others. I'm not sure. Used to be big in my life, not so much now. But that was interesting and fun to watch because it was a video game, so I'll watch it anyway. Then he did an episode called Did PSVR 2 Thief Game did the patch fix the brightness issue? For which he answered already in the header, nope. So I know already. But it was interesting to watch because you can watch the first one, then watch this one and see how this patch has actually patched the game for brightness, because apparently it's just too bright, too got a glowiness about it, a sort of like a haze. So that was interesting. So go over to Down the Rabbit Hole, absolutely fantastic channel, and his sister's channel, The Footnotes. She reviews books, so that's great. Then we move to Robert's Retro Gaming, my Canadian royalty friend, who does such great stuff. He does Minecraft and Fortress. Forgot what it's called now. Dwarf Fortress, I think it's called. Gameplay on the Commodore 64, Atari 8-bit, all of that sort of stuff. But this week has been totally about one system, and it's the NES. It's something that he's been banding about the last 2 weeks, saying, I've got an idea and I think I'm going to do it. Be a bit different. Hope you like it. And it filled me with intrigue for the last couple of weeks. And now we know it's NES gameplay. Now, this is the difficulty. He did over 20. And I had a lot of training to do this week, which meant I watched 12. So I'll mention the ones I watched. I watched Donkey Kong, Tetris, Castlevania 1, 2, and 3, Mario Brothers, Balloon Fight, Duck Hunt, Pac-Man Championship Edition, Super Mario Brothers, Galaxian, and Shadow of the Ninja. And if you count that up, that's nowhere near the 20 or so I listed. I think there's about 13 in there, 14. So you've got a heck of a lot to watch this week if you're interested. Hopefully, I think it slows down a little bit. Hopefully, I can't keep up. There will be a time where I just get fall so far behind I won't bother watching the rest. Which is a shame because I watch everything Robert does. But I've got to get caught up myself. So moving on, salute my friend, by the way, and salute to Down the Rabbit Hole. We get to Steve's Gaming. Now, he did two. He did Mr. Do Giveaway. Sorry, Mr. Do Gameplay. And he did Home Soft discs 106 and 107 for the Atari 800. Absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed my time going into Steve's world and watching him play games. It's almost like I've turned up sitting on the sofa and I'm sort of like watching him going, oh, wonder when I get a go. So that's if that's what his intention was, he succeeded, because that's how I felt. The next one is Colin Jones, aka Ponder. He did his 99th blog. Now he does a blog every 3 weeks or so. So absolutely marvelous that we get to see my friend doing stuff like this. Absolutely marvelous. Moving on, we got 20th Century Gaming, who was going to do a live stream but didn't, which is a shame. But I'm going to mention him because he did float around and come in to see us on the live with Ian. And it's only a matter of time before he'll stream. It's probably because there was a larger one that was streaming yesterday evening. And the last one is Mainmeister, who did an update on his channel. He's been away on holiday. He's had a few things to deal with life, and that's why we haven't seen him. But he'll be doing some more, and he's not gone away, and that's absolutely marvellous. Just going to take a sip, and I'll be back in a moment. And that's the end of the blog. I just stepped away for a moment. Needed to do a few things, but that's the end. So I put that over there, and I just end this. And I was just thinking while I was away, there was this interesting, I suppose it was a joke. It was somebody was talking about to another person. He said, I was asked a question, and the question was, what would I like to add to the periodic table? So it was a bit of a science one, periodic table, and it was a he, and he said, I'd like to add surprise. And it took this other person back. What? Surprise? I said, yeah, because then we'd have an element of surprise, wouldn't we? I thought, Jesus, that's not a bad dad joke. I don't know why it isn't. but I don't know what it is. Just tickled my funny bone. But that just shows probably my sense of humour, element of surprise. Come on. Anyway, and with that piece of like tumbleweed going across the screen right now, I'm going to end this. But of course, there is the things that turned up this week, which isn't an awful lot. I wonder if I've got even overhead cam working. Oh, I have. I don't know if I showed these last week. I don't think I did. This one turned up, Minority Report, 4K, steelbook. Bit disappointed with the cover, although basically it is a famous image. But it's a 4K release. It goes with my steelbooks. I'm surprised it's not been done before now. So that's interesting. So that was great. And then my friend Jim Jam told me that there was a cheap version of this TV series that I watched, and I've mentioned it before in my blogs, Crown Court, which was out in the 70s. It was a show that used to be shown at the same sort of time as General Hospital in the 70s. I watched it when I was off from primary school, so very early days before I went off to school when I was like secondary school from 11. So we were talking about my pre-teens. And I never understood them, but I was interested with all the debates that were going on. And I found out later on that this ran for nearly 10 years, and there was 3 episodes per case. That's what they call them, cases. And that meant that there was over 1,400 or so episodes. And they did it in seasons. And I've got season one, absolutely marvellous. It's from Network, so you can tell who it came from, Jim Jam, right? And I was putting it away with my other Network stuff, and this was on the top, which was the Shillingbury Tales. Remember that? That was in the early 80s. And I remember liking this because it was Robin Nedwell, and Robin Nedwell was in the Doctors series of comedies, and it had Diane Keaton in it, and she was in The Cuckoo Waltz. That's right, The Cuckoo Waltz. I haven't thought about that in years. And there was a couple of episodes I went, I'm sure there was another bloke in it that I really liked in it. Because this was a guy that was from London that was living in a village, and he sort of became the head of the village sort of thing, because they had a band and all of this sort of stuff, like a sort of like a big band, like that you'd play at fetes and things. And it had Bernard Cribbins in it. Bernard Cribbins, he was the tramp. And he was in 2 episodes of this. It didn't last very long. There's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 episodes, and then they cancelled it. So it came out in 1980 and finished in 81. And I just fell in love with it. So those were the things that turned up this week. Nothing special, I'm sorry to say. Maybe there's going to be some stuff soon, because Somewhere in Time comes out this month, along with a few other Arrow releases, like Westworld and stuff. I think I've ordered those. So there might be some more stuff. And that's it. That's your lot. I hope you enjoyed this blog. It's a little bit shorter, thank God. And next week is the last week of year 4. We're in the 52nd week. So that's it, aren't we? We moved to year 5. And wow, who'd have thought that I'd have been doing it for that long? It was just supposed to be something that I thought I might do for a year. Don't know. And my life, wow, it's when I think back, it'll be a reflection, I should think, next week. Maybe you've got a reflection on some of the things I've mentioned, stuff that I might have dropped that you want to see back or whatever. I'll leave that to you. Have a little think. Something about this that you'd like to talk about, that you really enjoyed or really hated or whatever. And with that, thanks very much, and I hope the rest of your week is great. Now, see you next week and see what's happening in the old Del Boy universe, because I live in the same one as you. Honestly, I do. But there we go. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.